Hello, and welcome back to another episode here on Pressing Positivity. Today I'm going to be talking about artist block or creative block and how I cope with it and how I try to get over it. But before I get into that, I just want to take a moment and say that I have finally created social media accounts. I'm not a huge social media person, but I created these accounts because a few people have tried to get in touch with me, and it's a little bit difficult through these platforms. Also, my podcast airs on about 9 different platforms, so I made a Twitter and an Instagram so people can have an easier time to respond to my questions or get in touch if they want to. So my socials will be in the description box of whatever platform you're listening on. Also, I always forget to ask people to follow or subscribe, so if you haven't followed or subscribed, please do so because it really helps me out and I super appreciate that. So, without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Like I said, artist block or creative block. I started creating when I was really quite young. I mean, beyond your kindergarten drawings at school. I started writing. Writing was my first form of creative expression, and I was really quite young. I think still in single digits when I started writing poetry. And I never had any type of creative block back then at all. It was just like every time I sat down to write, I was just able to write. And I wasn't writing complete garbage. I mean, I was pretty young. It wasn't amazing work, but it also wasn't garbage. When I got older, into my early teen years, I started writing on a typewriter. I found real inspiration when I was writing using a typewriter. And actually, to this day, I still feel way more inspired when I sit down in front of a typewriter and I see the page, growing when I'm typing on it, and it's real and it's there in front of you. I kind of shy away from digital when I'm creating, and I know that a lot of artists are digital artists and using their computer to create visual or graphic art, and also using computers for writing whatever they're writing, poetry or novels or short stories or whatnot. But for me, I really need there to be something tangible, in front of me, and that makes me feel way more inspired. Well, being an artist, I belong to a lot of pages or groups or threads or whatever on whatever different type of social platform, and I enjoy perusing and looking at other people's art, and I often see people talking about having creative block or artist block, and they just cannot move past it. And I can really relate to that because I've experienced this before many times, and it's something that I'm still kind of experiencing right now. So I wanted to kind of talk about it. Why do we get creatively blocked and what can we do to stop it? Because for the creative type of people, it's so frustrating when we want so badly to create something, but we just can't. Either we have too many ideas, or we don't have an idea, or we start something and it's not coming out how we envisioned it, and we are getting frustrated and we're stopping, etc. So let's talk about that today. So I'm sure all of you have heard the old adage that we are our own worst critics, and I super firmly believe that. And I think that part of the reason that when I was younger I didn't have a problem with getting creatively blocked was that I wasn't at an age yet where I was really judging myself, or at least not judging myself so harshly. There were no expectations, and then as I got older, I started to understand what's good and what's not so good, and I developed my own expectations for my work. And when my work wasn't meeting my own expectations, then I was getting frustrated or upset, or feeling like I didn't want to create. So I think a big part of the problem with creative block is our own expectations of our work and also our own pressure to be able to put our, what we envision onto the paper or the palette or the canvas or whatever medium you use. And I think that we need to be able to accept that sometimes we can't meet our own expectations, or sometimes it's not going to come out exactly how we envisioned it. And we have to be okay with that because art is so fluid. I also think that we set expectations for ourselves, or we pressure ourselves that every time that we create something, it has to be fucking amazing. And sometimes it's not going to be. It's very hit or miss, or sometimes in the middle, it can be mediocre too. But not everything that we create is going to be perfect and amazing, and certainly not everyone is going to love it. And a lot of times I see artists getting really frustrated because they're seeking outside validation for their work, either from family members or from social media or from groups that they belong to, and they're not receiving the validation that they're looking for, and they're not receiving the praise that they're looking for. But art isn't about having everybody understand it and having everybody fall in love with every piece that you create. And it's also not about making something perfect every time. I mean, sometimes to get past a block, I just have to make something. And sometimes I hate it and it's ugly. Or sometimes I end up loving it. Or sometimes I don't finish it. But I feel like I just have to make something. And that's part of, for me, how I can push through creative block sometimes. It doesn't work all the time, but sometimes. But for a minute, I want to go back to the outside validation thing because this is something that I see so much, and I just want to shake people sometimes because for most of us, art is a form of self-expression. It's how we express certain things that we aren't able to talk about or we aren't able to express in other ways. And just like you don't share every single part of yourself with every single person you don't have to share those parts of yourself with people. I know that for some people it's really upsetting and frustrating because they're sharing their art to someone whose opinion really matters to them, like family member or a loved one, significant other, etc. And those people aren't validating your work, but you don't need somebody to validate your feelings. You don't need other people to validate your self-expression. And you can choose who you share those parts of yourself with. They don't have to be shared with everybody. And it doesn't matter if you love your piece, it doesn't matter what other people think of it. It really doesn't. It only matters that you love it and how it makes you feel. So for being blocked creatively, I feel that one of the most important things is identifying why that happens. And a lot of times that can help people move past it or move through it. And I'm going to be talking specifically about painting because that is the one medium where I become the most blocked. But this information, in my opinion, is relevant for really any form of creative expression. You just change the word painting with writing or drawing or whatever your medium is. One thing that I've really noticed is that a lot of artists follow other artists on social media and they compare their work to other people, or they see other people's work and they consider it so much better than their own work that they actually stop considering themselves artists, or they see successful artists who sell a lot of paintings or sell a lot of media and they're feeling less sure of themselves as artists. But if you create something, if you express yourself in a creative way, you are an artist, period. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. You are an artist. If you crochet little creatures or make them out of polymer clay, or you build stuff from plaster of Paris or you decoupage little, things. You are an artist, okay? So you don't need to compare yourself to anyone else because that is your art. It's your creative expression, and you don't need to compare it to anybody else's. I think when we're first starting out as artists as well, we don't have any expectations for ourselves. You sit down with something that you want to try and you start trying it. And then you practice. You practice for hundreds and hundreds of hours. And then you start getting good. And then you make a piece that is like the defining piece. The piece that you have made that you now consider yourself an artist because it's beautiful and everybody loves it. But you have set an expectation for yourself. And a lot of people, when they create something after that one piece that really captured their heart or whatever, then they start to, that's the bar now. That's like the standard. And when you create something that is less than that, then you feel like it's garbage, but it's not. And sometimes people feel like with that one piece, they have peaked as an artist, and that they're not going to make something as good again. And then I've noticed a lot of people start fearing failure. They don't create because they're afraid to fail. And you can't really fail at art. That's something that I guess a lot of people don't know. Sometimes you might create a piece that you really hate, but it doesn't mean that you have failed as an artist. And also, just because you've made something that you don't like, it doesn't necessarily mean that no one will. I've made a lot of pieces that I really didn't like, but other people loved them, and it spoke to them. And when we're sharing our art, isn't that the point of it? Because we want to make someone feel something. We want to touch someone with the art or, that kind of thing. I really do believe that when we're sharing it, especially in a very public way, we want someone to feel something from it. So when I'm feeling super blocked or I'm feeling afraid to create because I might fail, I might not get the vision that's in my head onto the canvas, which is one of my major things because I'm a super perfectionist, which I know a lot of artists share that with me, that you need to have exactly what's on your head on the canvas, and when it's not that way, then it sucks. But no one else ever saw what's inside your head, so no one else knows that it's not perfect except for you. Sometimes you have to try and see your art through someone else's eyes, like someone that you trust their opinion or you want to share it with. Because a lot of times I've made something that I really hated or I was unsure of, but someone whose opinion I cared about, they really loved it. But they didn't see what I was envisioning in my mind. So to them it is perfect, even if to me it's not. When I'm feeling super blocked and I can't create something, I just do it anyway. I mess around with a lot of mediums. Painting is my favorite medium, but I mess around with other stuff like polymer clay. I crochet. I do other, crafts and arts. But I just make something. Just make something. Like if you're a painter, just do an acrylic pour. It's really hard to mess that up. I mean, I have messed up an acrylic pour, so it is possible, but just make something, There's no expectation with a pour because you can't ever anticipate what the paint is actually going to do. There's only a very small level of control over that. And so that going in. So your expectations are not that high. And you might end up really loving your piece. Just make something. Get finger paints and paint on a piece of paper. Get watercolors and just mess around with it. Try a new medium. Try something that you haven't tried before. So your expectations aren't going to be your peak piece. It's going to be, something new. So you don't have an expectation. And once you have created something, you'll at least feel a sense of accomplishment. You will start feeling better. And your creative juices hopefully will start flowing again. And that's really my best advice for dealing with creative block. Get rid of those elements that are blocking you. And typically it's, judgment from others, and it's also the fear of failure. And if there are people in your life who are tearing you down, don't share your art with them anymore. It's so easy for people to tear other people down. It's really hard for people to build other people up. And I promise you, there's no shortage of people in the world who are going to look down on your art and try to say something negative about it, especially if you're posting to social media. So don't do that. If it's making you feel shitty, don't do it. Just keep it for yourself or share it with people who are close to you. You don't need to listen to the opinions of 100 internet trolls. You only need your own opinion, because this is your self-expression. This is you expressing yourself in a creative way. So just remember that. And if you do make something, tweet it to me. I made the Twitter so that you can tweet it to me. All right, so thank you for listening, and I hope that this helped at least a little bit, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.